Energy Media readers, yesterday we talked about and interviewed a couple of experts about the economic package that was unveiled by the federal government. It's geared mostly to consumers, small businesses, self-employed workers. But there's a question that hasn't been answered, and that is what, if anything, the governments should do about the business community. To discuss this issue with me, I'd like to welcome Dr. Lindsay Tedds from the University of Calgary. So welcome to the interview, Lindsay.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
So give me your take on, just in general terms, about the program that was offered, was unveiled yesterday, and how that affects the business community, and maybe what we should do or shouldn't do for support programs for business.
Yeah, I think the important part that everybody needs to understand, both persons and businesses, is right now we're really focused on making sure that we're supporting people through this self-isolation and social distancing factor. We're not talking about business stimulus. We're not talking about recovery. We are probably 6 months away from even contemplating that. This is about supporting everybody, making sure that workers can stay home when they're sick, that workers can work from home if they can, although those of us with children are struggling with that. And as a result, we as consumers are out of the market, and businesses are feeling the impact from that right now. So these policies focused on businesses are about trying to bridge them as we are all self-isolating to the point where we are allowed back out and starting to act as consumers again.
So you were telling me before we started the interview that we have to be careful here, because if we rush too quickly, we don't do it right the first time, we risk having secondary effects like bringing people back into the marketplace before the virus has been eradicated or is under control. They get reinfected, and away we go again. We're just back in the same place we are now. Maybe you could explain that a little further.
Well, I mean, this is a coronavirus, and we are still trying to understand the amount of time that we have our temporary immunity, because it's not permanent immunity. There's no herd immunity here. So what we're trying to get an understanding of is how long does it take for this virus to sort of be eradicated, so that when we start getting back out there, we don't immediately pick it back up and then start all over from stage one. Right now, all eyes are on China. China is in that process of relaxing its restrictions. Its demand is coming back online, and we're watching it to see what those implications are. The thing is as you can imagine, is if we relax these restrictions in 3 or 4 months, and there are still people who are carrying that virus, if we start seeing these infection rates again, and we have to do this again, we're prolonging our economic recovery by 6 more months. And that's going to be even more devastating on our businesses. So we really do have to make sure that we do this right, that we don't expedite it, that we listen to our public health authorities, and we do it slowly, we do it gradually, and we have the right programs in place to bridge everybody through that process.
Now, we have, Canada has millions of businesses across the country that range from small little operations, I guess, like Energy Media. We're a corporation, employ 2 people, and we have suppliers and so on, and all the way up, of course, to some of the giant corporations we see in Alberta, you know, that oil and gas, like the Suncors and the Imperial Oils. Are we just going to have to accept the fact that some of these businesses are going to fail? It's the price of managing the pandemic properly?
Unfortunately, yes. There are some businesses that are just not going to have the capability to withstand months without income coming in, even with these support packages. I mean, when you look at the federal packages supporting businesses, it's going to support businesses that are okay, that have some ability to withstand periods of time without income. But there's a lot of businesses who can't go a month without income. And these packages are not for those businesses. Whether or not that changes, I don't know. But right now, a lot of our businesses who are on that edge, and there's a lot of the restaurants, the service industry, the tourism industry, accommodations, the arts and culture sector, the service sector is really going to be hit hard by this. And these packages aren't going to help that. And unfortunately, as we always see with these economic shocks, we can't save everyone. And that's why we do need also these packages to help people with job loss.
Now, I've done a number of interviews about the impact that this is going to have on the junior oil and gas sector, because they were already in a capital crisis, have been for a couple of months. We're seeing a number of them go bankrupt and throw their orphaned wells onto the Orphan Well Association. There's a very good chance that if this is prolonged, we're going to see significant failure in that particular sector. So the question is, okay, fine, some small producers, maybe even a large number, go bankrupt. What does that do to other related sectors? And I'm thinking primarily of the finance sector that has billions and billions of dollars, that they've loaned to these companies. Do we see a run on banks, or do the banks just register a loss or a lower profit in that quarter? How does that work?
I'm not sure we'll see a run on banks. I'd like to think that we've really worked well on our, here in Canada, specifically on our bank policies to not have that happen. We have been seeing over the last 4 or 5 years a lot of divestment of our banks from the oil and gas industry, and a lot more diversity in the investments in our main capital industry. I think the sector I'd be much more worried about is the service sector to the oil and gas industry. I think that they will probably be the ones hit first and foremost before we start seeing a lot of those bankruptcies in the oil and gas sector. But I think just last week, I was saying this is going to be a bloodbath. I mean, the oil prices are going to stay low for a long time because that's worldwide demand is going to be low for a long time. This is going to be a long process in which worldwide demand is going to be low. And when we come back from it, it may in fact be the permanent structural shift to renewables that may cause this industry to have that last little bit of incentive to divest.
Now that's very interesting because I'm writing a column, so this will be our final question. And I'm asking the question, is the pandemic and combination of the COVID-19 pandemic and the global price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia, is it possible that that could initiate a step change in the pace of the energy transition? And it sounds like from what you just said that maybe that is a real possibility.
I think there's a real possibility for a number of structural shifts to evolve from this. There's going to be a lot of gut checks. There's going to be a lot of change in consumer behavior. We will not be going back to the world that we had. And sometimes, I mean, we're only like several weeks into this. It can be hard to see it, but it's really hard to undo behavioral changes to the extent that we are going to be engaging in this kind of lifestyle. 6 months, a lot of us are going to be here where we're not commuting. We're not going to be doing a lot of things that we're normally doing. So yeah, this is going to be a structural shift, and we are going to see significant changes in behavior. Oil and gas sector being one of them, online shopping being another, a lot of other sectors, retail another one. Yeah.
Lindsay, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate your insights. And because this is going to be an ongoing news story of great interest to our readers, I look forward to chatting with you about it again in the near future.
Sure, that sounds great. Thank you very much for having me.